going in a moment of silence. Thank you very much. Please be seated. Remember to silence your cell phones if you have them. Do we still have Andy and Josh Widman on the phone?
This is Andy checking in.
Joshua's here as well.
First item on the agenda is citizen concerns. Are there any citizen concerns on an item not already addressed on the agenda? I have been told we may have one calling in that we'll address when we get. Kevin Green may also call in order to address that question. So for now, moving on to approval of the agenda, I'll move it.
Second.
Second by Radig. Hearing no discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 4-0. Items 3 through 6 constitute a consent agenda of routine action items to be considered by one motion. Items pass unanimously unless a separate vote is requested by a board member. Item 3 is approval of the minutes of the April 21st meeting. Item 4 is approval of the claims. Item 5 from board administration includes A, approval of lifting of tax suspension for initials KW, B, approval of lifting tax suspension for initials ML, and C, approval of resolution for a tax suspension for initials KH. And item 6 from Human Resources includes A, approval of the memorandum of personnel transactions, and B, approval of retiree requests to remain on the health and dental insurance. I'll move the consent agenda.
Second.
Second by Radig. Hearing no discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 4-0. Item 7 from the county auditor, Pat Gill, includes A, for action, consideration of vacation payout due to extenuating circumstances. Gill?
Michelle, you want to come up? This is as a result of our software conversion that we went through. Michelle spent an extensive amount of time to go through that conversion. She did a lot of the work and saved the county a ton of money. We considered hiring consultants, but she did it, and she spent numerous nights and weekends in here along with just her regular days doing this. And so in the end, she's facing, how much time did you?
60 hours I'm losing on May 1st.
And so, and it just kind of compounds every time that you have this issue comes up, is that you can just roll it over. We have the possibility of doing that, but what Michelle asked in exchange for was that she would be paid out for this rather than just move it over to the next fiscal year. And so that's what she asked, and I told her I would support that, and that's what we're asking for you folks to do this evening, is to pay that out for her rather than lose it.
We do have it within our payroll portions of our budget due to the no pay absence of an employee. There is extra funding within the personnel portion of our.
And that was part of the part of what occurred. Is she was without a clerk for 4 months during this period of time. It was a pretty extensive period of time, and Michelle came through and got it done. It's been pretty successful.
So you're thinking of taking it out of Pat's salary, is what you're saying? So I'll move
If
it.
that's what it takes.
Second.
Motion by Radig, second by Potabom. Any other discussion?
Well, we've got deputies in other areas, namely the sheriff's office, are going through the same thing. As much as I sympathize with it, I struggle to make a one-on-one. I mean,
I can tell you that the pilot project is outside of the work scope. It's not something that is in the job description. It's something that I took on because I knew it would help both us and the treasurer's office. And so that is a little bit outside of what I would normally do. I was able to get my routine duties done. Sometimes it took me a little longer to respond to emails from people, and occasionally still that's going on. And when you're absent employee, that's an employee in your office for 1/3 of the year, you have to deal with those tasks that normally you don't do also. It is a little bit long.
And, you know, with that considered, the amount of extra work you had to do for that Tyler software conversion alone, I think warrants what I considered a bonus at some point, but this is some way of granting that since you didn't take that time off. You can at least be paid for that time off that you didn't take. I think it's more than fair, and I can't name anyone else in the county that's done what you had to do over the last year as far as extra work for that project, and while having a shorthanded person in your office as well. So I'll support it.
Thank you.
I don't think anyone's dissatisfied by the job that you've done, and obviously there have been some staffing issues that weren't your fault. But full disclosure, I did want to bring up that another deputy in another office has brought up some concerns internally and states, for years I have lost vacation time. I too have often worked after hours and on weekends. I would hope that if the Board of Supervisors is going to change the use it or lose it policy for vacation time, that the change be made for all employees. I see no rational reason why some county employees should be given a benefit that is denied to similarly situated employees. Yes.
Well, my personal feelings are this is what comes under extenuating circumstances. And if the other deputy had extenuating circumstances, I'd be more than willing to hear him too. I think this is over and above just use it or lose it, the fact that she was doing the special project where she couldn't use it, and now we're hitting the date where she's going to lose it. And that's why I think that's extenuating, which means out of the ordinary, and that's why I will support it.
And again, I just don't think of any other situation where the boards look to a deputy to do the work of what a consultant would have done. What would a consultant have cost to do this conversion? I mean, if the board asks another deputy to do additional work outside the scope of their work, you know, maybe that would be something we would look at. But in this case, this is kind of a one-of-a-kind situation.
I think they're all one-of-a-kind situations. And that's what I don't want to step into. We had the Hornick flood a year ago. I know a lot of deputies lost their vacation time because they were down there working on that. That was an extenuating circumstance.
And I would have said the same thing then if they'd come forward too.
Well, they didn't. I mean, at what point, I mean, as much as I sympathize, if it was 6 hours, I mean, at times we can't control what projects come up and who, I mean, why didn't we hire a consultant? Was that on the board? Was that on, who made that decision to not hire the consultant in a money savings gesture?
That was a combination between Michelle and I.
Okay.
We did consult, we had a consultant when we were pre-implementation, and we did pay considerable funds, probably 10 times what I'm asking for here, just for the small amount of time that he helped us to calculate what the expenses would be for the project. Working with IT, trying to figure out before we presented to the board. We did speak with him in sync with the Tyler individuals, and we asked him, moving forward, what he thought, and he said this is a large project, it's a complicated project, but he thought that internally it would be good to have a project manager, because basically that consultant doesn't know our system, and they would be coming to us, and we'd be fielding those questions to the consultant as opposed to fielding those questions on our own. So kind of like we would almost be a middle person.
There were no promises made during this entire process. This is something that Michelle and I had numerous conversations with her, that if this was in the private sector, you would have been justly rewarded for this. And it was, you can ask anybody who was involved with this project, from the IT department to Mr. Butler to anybody who was involved in this project, is that she went well beyond what the scope of her duties were and what anybody expected of her. And I think this is a reasonable request. It's a one-time request, and anybody who really knows all the details of it would appreciate that.
Does Mr. Woodman have an opinion? Because I saw something in the letter from a deputy attorney, county attorney, that could that violate state code at the 85%?
Well, I think that is something that we need to be aware of, because, yeah, a deputy under Iowa code cannot make more than 85% of the principal elected official. And my understanding is that the salaries are set at 85%. So if this would be considered part of base salary, then it would be prohibited by Iowa code. It's a little bit of a gray area because the statute indicates that base salary does not include overtime pay, longevity pay, shift differential pay, or other supplemental pay and fringe benefits. If it's considered vacation time, that usually doesn't fall in one of those categories. But something like a bonus or a payout of sick time upon retirement would not be something that falls under base salary. So I don't know if Melissa had some additional thoughts on this as well, but I think it's a little bit of a gray area. If it clearly fell within base salary, then it would be prohibited. It's arguable that it's supplemental pay. Again, I defer to Melissa as far as how she feels that it would be classified.
I did consult with our external auditor, and he was under the belief that it would not count towards the 85%. I also consulted with IPERS, and IPERS would not be included in any payout like this.
Who is the outside?
Williams and Company.
Okay.
Now, was that analysis under IRS rules or specifically under the statute?
The statute, he quoted the same thing that you mentioned as far as the fringe benefits and severance and so forth that would be allowed.
Again, what is the dollar amount we're talking about? The agenda blanked out the page for me on the first page.
2244, plus 171 in benefits.
Joshua, would it be okay to request this at this point as supplemental pay?
I would even call it a bonus.
Well, that's what the terms in the...
Sure.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly would have to be that as opposed to base pay in order to be permissible under the statute. I think supplemental pay is probably, it's not really defined in the statute, but it could arguably be a situation like this.
Across the state, for auditors, which this would fall under too, is that auditors are often paid supplemental pay because they do the budget duties for the Board of Supervisors, which is not under the auditor's responsibilities. So it is done across the state in this matter for duties that are beyond the scope of their job description.
I'm just afraid are we going to have this on a regular basis, on a case-by-case basis from here on out?
I would submit that if you did it under supplemental pay, it would not be the same thing.
Melissa, any cases you can think of regarding supplemental pay as sort of a performance-based bonus?
Melissa Thomas, Resources Director. I really cannot think of any example.
We do it every year for seniority pay.
That's longevity.
Longevity,
Okay.
that's right. And it's the same category.
The same category, I guess I was looking at the bonus supplemental, but the longevity, yes, all deputies get longevity.
Yes.
And then we do, like you mentioned, pay out the sick.
Can you explain that again, Mr. Gill?
Is beyond, because some deputies are at 85%, in order to pay them more than the 85%. And when previous boards had not given raises, they'd given raises to management employees, what's it called, wage plan employees receive raises that were, and elected officials didn't receive wages. That's when we went with longevity pay in order to make up that difference. So that's how you are able to exceed the 85% base salary.
How many, was it a meeting every week? Was it 2 a week? I mean, you held quite a few.
Sometimes weekly. We're still having monthly post-production meetings, which with COVID, we haven't been doing that. There's still parts of the projects that are still being implemented that I'm still managing, the executive time card system. There are smaller pieces of the project that I'm still managing. I get calls from other offices, the treasurers, the recorders, asking me about things about the software because I'm the one that knows the most in the county about the software. So I'm kind of the go-to person. I get directed calls from IT if somebody has questions about the software. So there's a lot that is going to continue in my career related to Tyler and referring people to the right places for them to get the information that they need.
We're over the year point. I mean, you're.
No, honestly, yes, we've been working on this for a long time. The pre-implementation, we started our accounts payable on June 26th was our first payable packet. Our first payroll was July 5th. We went live on taxes. We were able to get the statements out by September 1st, which,
But we were having Tyler planning meetings before I was a chair.
yes, we planned.
And I was
a
the
lot
chair
and
for a full year, so you've been doing this for well more than a
I've
year.
been doing it, yes, it's been
So-
2 years at least.
I honestly don't know anyone else in this organization that's done that. Not any position that has been asked to do above and beyond, scheduling, holding meetings, chairing those meetings for well over a year to save the county money, which would have been anywhere from probably $25,000 to $75,000 for a consultant. To me, this is a no-brainer. I just don't understand any other person in the organization that could claim they've done what Michelle's done as far as a special project.
I think it's clear you've done an excellent job, and that's stated over and over again, and I totally agree. To the comments on extenuating circumstances being easier to come by if this were to be approved, I agree with that. I do think that there are extenuating circumstances to what I think it would be brought up. I think it would set some sort of a precedent that, anyone that loses vacation time within the courthouse, if they could use it, they would be in a position to use it. They wouldn't have to lose it, but it is a policy.
But after this conversation, I'm asking you not to consider it as vacation pay. I'm asking you to consider it as supplemental pay based on something that was beyond the scope of her duties.
So I would amend my motion to say supplemental pay.
And the second.
And what would the total amount of that supplemental pay be?
So it's 2250-ish?
$22.50.
I think that's a step in the right direction. I don't want this to cause any jealousy within the courthouse. A lot of different employees work hard.
I remember Dennis giving back, and ever since I've been here, giving back vacation. But
I know
He should
does.
use a day tomorrow.
And that's true. Dennis has given back vacation time year over year. I just don't want it to be seen as a negative performance indication to other employees, if that makes sense. Especially since it was obviously based upon the vacation time. We can say now that we're changing it to another category, but it was on the agenda as such. It's pretty clear to everyone in the courthouse that what happened was vacation was paid back, and
Well, that's not what the minutes will reflect. It's successful.
that is true.
It would be the worst kept secret in the county.
It would. Well, I just really don't want to cause the opposite effect of commending you to be felt by others who themselves may not have been as, at any time in the past few years, been as willing to step forward and gain the support of their elected official and ask the board.
I got to say, though, if you don't reward somebody for saving us this kind of money, where's the incentive for any employee to want to step forward and kind of do that for us in the future at the same time? So if any other employee in our organization wants to save us $25,000 to $75,000 by doing what a consultant would have done, by working extra hours and not taking your vacation for about a year, I'll take it. Let's bring the proposal, we'll talk about it.
Not wanting to set a precedent with this, but understanding that it is an extenuating circumstance, specifically outside of the scope of your duties, I'll support this.
Thank you.
Again, I don't want this to set a precedent for loss of vacation time due to performance of job duties within the salaried position. But given that this was substantially outside the scope, as has been mentioned, I think that's what just puts it over the line for me. But these are tough decisions, and if this comes up every week, the board's not going to have a fun time and may eventually want to just stick to the policy. But
well, I'm not fond of it coming up 2 days before the anniversary date. I mean, I sympathize, I appreciate it. There's no possible way you could burn 60 hours between now and whatever. I'm just not comfortable setting that precedent. I'm just not. I mean, I think I do my best to treat employees as well as we can, but when we're sitting here looking at this on April 28th and the anniversary date's May 1, I'm struggling with it.
That's a little bit with my time management. I've been without a staff member since the beginning of April, and I know that's no excuse, but, you know, I juggle things and I prioritize, and this is, I just wanted to ask this of you, and I just didn't have time to get it on the agenda until now because of other higher priority things that I was working on.
Oh, look at that, she even put it on the agenda for Pat. That's another extenuating circumstance.
Again, everyone that loses any vacation time has some sort of extenuating circumstance.
This is a bonus for doing the Tyler project.
I know, but we started off of that basis, so. But being substantially outside the scope of your duties and as what I would call performance bonus. As Pat said, in the private sector, there would be some sort of a reward for defraying cost, especially if you sat down and said, can you handle this? And it'll take up some time, and you're willing to do that. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay.
Nay.
Passes 3-1. DeWitt opposed.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Item B, consideration approval of liquor license for the Anthon Golf Course. I'll move it.
Second.
Second by Potabom. Hearing no discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 4-0. Item 8 from Secondary Roads, County Engineer Mark Nera, includes A, approval of resolution to install a yield sign at the intersection of Charles Avenue and County Home Road.
Is that a stop sign now?
Pardon me?
There's nothing there?
There's nothing there at this point in time. Much of the year, that corner is fine. You can see around it, but when the crops start getting up, it is blind. And in those cases, I recommend a yield. It still places the responsibility upon the driver to approach the intersection from the north with caution and to realize that they don't have the right-of-way going through that intersection. I don't put a stop sign up where the other 4 or 5 months of the year that we have good visibility, though. So again, the yield is the best traffic control device in this case. And I recommend installation of the yield sign.
I'll move it.
I'll second the motion by DeWitt.
I will say, in all my years in law enforcement, I always said the most worthless thing in the world is a yield sign. But
Actually, if you read through the manual, it places a higher requirement upon the driver.
Yeah.
The stop sign says stop. You can stop, pull out in front of somebody. You've complied with the law by stopping.
now there's a part of the code for the
I
stop.
realize that they say stop and yield the right of way, but in this case, the yield sign does put a great deal of responsibility upon.
Well, I'm agreeing with you, but I've always said that's the most worthless piece of traffic control device there is. And he shaking his head yes with me.
We'd have a long discussion about weight limit signs too, because that's probably my most difficult sign to get judges to enforce.
Hearing no other discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 4-0. Item B is to award the bid for project number parent C278 Dixon Construction for $175,979.
There were no errors in the bids as read. I recommend award.
I'll move it.
Second.
Second by DeWitt. Hearing no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 4-0. Item C is approval of the plans for project number parent M66.
It's on 240th Street between Taylor and Union Avenue. We're replacing a severely load-restricted bridge with a cast-in-place box culvert. Recommend approval of the plans.
I'll move it.
I'll second the motion by Radig. Hearing no discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 4-0.
Well, if I'm off work any longer, I'll need one of those weight limit signs for my chair.
Just one thing I want to make the board aware of. We are entering into a period where we're seeing a reduction in our road use tax fund receipts. We're expecting this May payment that'll be coming to be lower than most. Construction projects are where I'm going to make my adjustments. We've seen what happens when we don't keep up with maintenance on specifically on our gravel road system. We're going to be working to keep everything moving forward in the maintenance area. We have roughly $2 million in new construction projects. That should be less than what our anticipated revenue reductions are if we don't see anything go lower than what we're at right now. And that would basically take a reduction in truck deliveries, truck traffic. It's the automobile traffic that's really low right now, and new vehicle purchases. Those are probably the two biggest effects on the road use tax fund. With that too, Dennis and I are watching my local option sales tax, which is a worry on our local effort as well. I haven't seen what the impacts on that one are yet. We'll be watching it over the next couple of months too. I think we've got enough in the bank to, one more culvert project. After that, we may be delaying some projects until the revenue picture turns itself around.
Thank you. Item 9, again, for potential action, states, due to COVID-19, the board will be discussing various issues and may take appropriate steps for the protection and safety of both the community and county employees. I had a question, maybe it's for Otter's office, maybe it's for Dennis. Has anyone been tracking the potential legislative impact of a relief payment to counties, specifically our county?
I don't think there is any yet. Is there in that phase 4? They're talking about coming up.
Well, I know there's been talk about it. I don't know how.
Phase 4, if they can get it approved, be state and local governments.
ISAC has been lobbying for it, and they also have sent out alerts trying to get people to contact their representatives in order to make sure that it's in the next round.
I'm sure there'll be something. So just keep an eye on that, Dennis, and let us know if that's going to make up in different cases like this for road use or not quite fill in the gap or anything like that.
The County Engineers Association has also requested a backfill of highway funds.
Okay.
As part of our next bill. Our executive boards submitted a letter to Congress and the President on that regard.
Okay. Any thoughts from the board on the pandemic progress issues? Anything from you, Melissa? No?
Didn't the governor extend it out till May 15th or something?
14th.
Yeah, Woodbury is still status quo until then. We can't sit down at a restaurant. Kevin, are you on the phone?
Yes, I'm here.
Whoa, you are.
Okay.
Are you aware of the individual that contacted you earlier and that I thought would be calling into the meeting, calling in? Or
I did indicate that I was planning. I called him back, answered a lot of questions with him, told him I'd be present and a part of this meeting, that if he had further questions, he may be referred to me or not. So I don't know if he decided not to call in or not. But I did have about a 25-minute conversation with him.
you want to repeat that, just starting now for 25 minutes? No, I'm just kidding. You can't
Okay.
tell I'm kidding over the phone.
All right.
Sarcasm doesn't.
Yeah, sarcasm doesn't, can't see my facial expression, especially with the camera being so far away. But as long as you're here, could you give an update and maybe if there's any questions that that gentleman, the reporter, posed to you that you'd like to communicate to us?
Right. I think in all reality, if you watch the media, we have had a dramatic increase in the number of cases. We've been working diligently. The latest sort of flurry of activity was related to what we, as a local public health department, had to could release for information legally. Essentially, everything says it's got to come out of the state epidemiologist or state director of public health. So we're not able to release details related to it. We've been pushing hard at the state level to get them to come forward and provide some information. And today, in visiting with one of the mayors, they're really working at pushing to also what we need is, I think one of the things we're struggling with is we all know we operate from the tri-state region and area, and what happens in one area affects another, but we're not quite sure the states have that full concept yet. So looking at them getting together to discuss about what approach is going to happen. As we've done the case contact investigations, this is what it would be. I mean, I was just watching a news loop now. At this point in time, Seaboard Triumph has just announced they have 11 cases that came out through one of the local media outlets. So that's there's two main areas we're looking at, those type of enterprises, and then we also are very protective of the long-term care facilities. And so I think those are some of the things that are kind of on our board that we've been kind of giving guidance with, trying to visit with them about, and do a lot of work in that area is what it is, also. And so I think it's, those are kind of one of the things we don't have an awful lot of control of what different employees do, but those employers are working to look to prevent, first off, the incidence of it, second off, the spread of it, because it's, an economic hardship to them along with the entire region. So I don't know what we're going to look at doing. We're just waiting for a point if there's any connections you have. We've also mentioned the fact that it would be most appropriate if in one of the state updates that came about, if somebody would actually mention Sioux City or Woodbury. And part of our concern is when you look at that map as far as what's been released, we are that island on the west border. And I just have, to make sure to emphasize, we still are in an area of need, and we're only about maybe 2 weeks behind what Blackhawk County was and some of the things that they're actually facing. So at this point in time, all testing numbers reflect those that were locally done either through Community Health Center or a healthcare network. We have not had any teams come in from the state to do it. As you've seen in Nebraska, that's another option we're trying to figure out how to take a look at it. But I mean, those are all things that are playing in the parameters that we're trying to monitor, and we're not always involved with those discussions. We end up finding out they're coming when they're on their way here. So that's kind of frustrating for us. But we just, right now we're doing the case investigations, trying to get information out there and keep people updated as much as we can.
Yeah, I did hear from one of the governor's press conferences that a team was coming to Woodbury County. So you don't know when, though.
No, we don't.
Hi, Kevin. I have a question. This is Melissa Thomas. So with so many cases now, there's somebody knows somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody that might be getting tested.
Could you step up there
Positive. I
so
didn't
that
know
they
if I-
can hear you? I think.
Do you have like a general summary of how this should be handled? If a person comes to you and says they know somebody that has been tested, or how many relationships out should we start quarantining? What do you think about that as a brief summary?
I guess if it's a contact of a contact of a contact, that's probably not anybody that needs to be isolated at this point. If they have been in for extended period of time with a confirmed case, that takes on a different scenario or situation. But simply because there is a potential that they just either pass them in the hall or may have been in the same building at the same point in time, we're not looking at that as really considered as a case contact. Most of those that we have, whether it's been in the workplace or in the homes, those have been individuals that they have had concentrated time together. Desks are located somewhere close together, their physical work, those types of things. So I think of the friend of a friend of a friend thing is a far stretch as far as needing time off. But then now the other side of it is if they get the fever, the cough, that sort of stuff symptomatic, then that puts us in a different scenario where there's a recommendation that they, monitor that very closely. And for sure, that'd be a point in time that it may be a day they need to take off to see if the symptoms further develop, or is it just an uptick in one thing. And so I think those are some things that have to go into really with the self-care type thing. And I keep the thing is that we're finding in some of these is assuring that if they're not employees are not feeling well. One of the things when they talk about not having feeling well, we have a few of the reports that have come back that said, well, yeah, they took some ibuprofen and I felt better and went to work. It doesn't relieve the responsibility of the spread. So those are some other kind of tidbits that I guess we've garnered through all the case investigations we've done.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions for Kevin specifically?
Kevin, what is the process to inform the public of where they go to get tested?
Basically what we look at right now with the way the process is, and we're, the Test Iowa is another thing that the governor has pushed out, but really what's currently exists in the current process is if you are not feeling well or sick, we advise you that you call. If you have a primary care provider, you call to that physician. If you don't have a primary care provider, you can call to the Sioux Community Health Center. And what they do then is they'll go through and they'll do a health assessment. And a lot of these are now done in the virtual format, so you don't have to actually go to the office. And what they do is after that is a determination if they qualify and they're recommending you to go get tested. They then will submit the either some of the healthcare providers are directing you to their location on site. Other ones are submitting all that information to the community health center, and then they will do the follow-up with notification of the time slot you've got, where to report, and that type of thing. And so then that just takes them right through the drive-in facility. I mean, what I've been hearing is elsewhere, even on the Nebraska side, when they have come in and done some targeted testing within some of the businesses, they've had wait times of up to 3 hours with a very small group. Sioux Community Health Center, in a matter of 6 hours last week, ran 440 people through one day. So they're very efficient in getting it done quickly. So I give them kudos with that to be able to do that. But it really goes to your primary care physician. There's no called open testing at this point in time.
Is there a negative to doing open testing? I mean, other than you'd probably have a lesser percentage of positives, but...
Yeah, there would be a lesser percentage of positives. I think the only reason for the open testing is everyone's going to rush in and get it done, and then we have an overwhelming number that come back negative, which we think would be great, except for the challenge it presents is it may give a false level of security, thinking I don't have it, I may not get it. What we're most interested in, and we're starting to see a little bit in the community, is what they call the antibody testing. That's a blood test. And it's to determine if the antibodies, such as you may have had it, you've gotten it over, and those protective antibodies are present in your system. Because we're also suspect there may be some individuals that had slight cases of it and weren't aware they had it. And so they've recovered from it without any extenuating circumstances. And that's just something, there's a couple providers that are starting to offer some of that. And that's other information we're interested to see. Maybe the recovery rate's better than what we anticipated.
So who's offering that?
I'm not. I know that I think the Family Healthcare Siouxland sent out an email to all of their patients, saying that that was one thing that they had. And I know there's some others that are. There's a med spa down on 4th Street that was offering it before. I don't know the particulars related to that, but I know we're going to see more and more of that as far as people recruiting to come in and get the antibody test. And there's actually some of that with some of the testing they're doing. Some of these strike force teams that have gone into the businesses, they're doing both the nasal swab to do positive identification to test for the COVID, but then they're also doing the antibody testing all at the same time. So they're running 2 tests dually with someone because they want to see if you have it. More importantly, is it something you may have had and recovered? They want to get that identified. And that strike force team is something we're kind of looking at, is there potential or when might that come out to the western part of the state?
Does that answer your question? Any other questions for Kevin?
I would follow up. I don't know what the individual was that was going to call in. You asked him if Kevin had a conversation. Can we talk about that?
Oh, sure. Kevin?
Yes.
Did you want to talk about the individual that called you along with the concerns? I think that mostly had to do with the reporting, wasn't it?
Yes, is what it was. This was a gentleman that was actually out of the publication he listed was the Times Herald in Carroll. And he was going to call in during the citizens' concern. You know, he just had some general things about with the surge in cases in Woodbury County, how concerned should the rest of Western Iowa be related to this. And what I talked with him about is that we have to understand that when we're talking about this food processing employee sort of base, they're a very migratory base. For example, if they lose a position in one, they know because of the unemployment, they will drive. And in visiting with one of my counterparts in another county, they discovered with one of their positive cases that they had a county employee or a county resident that was driving over 2 hours one way to the workplace to get it is what it was. So they are willing to drive for employment and for the benefit, the checks is what it was. I think what the concern was in taking a look and approaching this is we immediately think that one of these plants should probably be closed down for the sanitation, but on the other hand, that can create that backlash of there may be individuals that have been exposed, possibly positive, that we haven't gotten identified, and they will head on to another plant to go to work. So it's kind of a fine line as far as what's the best recommended response to something like that if you do have a plant that ends up with a high number of cases. Really talked about some things to be able to stem the spread. We're working with some of the packing plants. I've contacted IDPH, the Iowa Department of Public Health, to ask if they have some more stringent guidance. That's not an area we work in a lot, but we have talked a lot about the social distancing and other sort of remedial things they can do to prevent it. They're doing just like you're doing the temp screening, wellness checks, some of the education that goes along with it. One of the challenges that comes with this is just the comprehension in the many languages, is assuring that occurs in every language that's present in some of these plants, and I think that's a real struggle sometimes too to assure that's occurring. But that was pretty much the general sort of gist of what we really talked about, I guess, over the course of the kind of interview.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're certainly welcome to stay on the line. I think I'll move on within this topic. Did either Pat Gill or Josh Widman want to discuss other potentials for electronically allowing people to participate in meetings, like through Zoom and such?
Yes, what concern was raised last week that we had kind of consistently had more than 10 people here at this meeting. And so just was wondering how we should go about monitoring that situation. And then also just a concern as far as other meetings that take place in the courthouse that we can do through Zoom and that sort of thing. I was concerned Friday at the policy meeting that was not exactly an exemplary what occurred there. So I think that as a county we should be more aware of the potential to be able to conduct those sorts of meetings in a manner that is consistent with what the governor's original declaration was.
I guess an IT question, why Zoom over Teams?
Everybody right has Zoom on their phone? Oh, except Dennis.
I don't either.
You guys got to sit in here in person then.
That's what I would do anyway.
Just stick an iPad here for my head.
Andy, I think you can come up now. I think there's 10.
He makes 11 now.
Do you want me to speak to that?
Yes, please.
Sure.
All the county employees should have Microsoft Teams installed on their work computers. For work meetings, that's would be preferable. The host of a Zoom meeting needs to have a license to host a meeting longer than 40 minutes. And there is also a participant limit. WIC IT doesn't have Zoom licenses available for employees. We kind of chose the competitor, the Microsoft Teams. So as far as county employees go, we would encourage the use of Teams for video meetings, call-in meetings. And I would be the contact person for that in our department. So.
Joshua, is there a component to that as far as the public having access to it? And Andy, is there a way that they could do that? What sort of meetings have to be posted, Joshua?
Well, whether it's electronic or in person, the same rules would apply for posting of an agenda and those sorts of things. What we're doing as far as the ability to call in via telephone, it satisfies the basic requirement. If it's a situation where, and we haven't really tested, I guess, our technical capabilities too much because we haven't had a lot of members of the public calling in. I don't think that there's a requirement that the individual be able to participate or by means of viewing documents or seeing documents that are being passed around, but from the standpoint of it might not be a legal requirement, but it certainly would be helpful to someone who's trying to be informed about what's going on and that sort of thing. So I think that the more technology probably makes it easier, but as far as meeting the bare bones requirement of electronic participation, calling in by phone satisfies that, at least as to members of the public.
So am I gathering a consensus between everyone involved that Teams is best for internal meetings and Zoom may be what allows the public to see more?
You can invite members of the public to a Teams meeting. It's basically, you create an invite right out of your Outlook email client, and you can invite anyone you can send an email to. And again, if county employees would be interested in doing that, they could reach out to me anytime and I can help them get it working.
So why did you do a test Zoom conference if it wasn't really the best way to do it?
Zoom provides tie-in to YouTube, so it was the best solution for this specific meeting.
Got it.
Microsoft Teams does not tie in with YouTube, so in order to comply with the BOS Board of Supervisors Tuesday night live stream, we chose Zoom for that solution.
Got it.
One other advantage Zoom does have is Microsoft Teams has a limit of 4. You see 4 faces on the screen at a time. The Zoom product will allow, something up to 40 or 140. You see multiple faces as opposed to just 4. Would be another reason if we wanted to do this meeting on Zoom, we would want all your faces on the screen. So.
Not necessarily.
So you'd set something up on the podium there facing us or back there?
Ideally, if we did the Board of Supervisors meeting via Zoom, you guys would do it from preferably your houses, your office, a remote location, the laptop and a webcam.
A remote location. I'd still be here to sign things and such.
Yeah, I think I'd want to be here too, because we all sign things.
So for those that are here, you'd set up some sort of camera?
Yes, possibly. Or perhaps you would just have to have a laptop with you here.
So I could look at Raddick on my laptop to his laptop there. And
Oh,
Punishing yourself, huh?
Well, I'll be able to get a haircut soon, okay, guys? All right.
Not till the 15th.
are we all counting the people at the governor's press conference and the White House and noticing that there's
Yeah, they don't follow their own orders.
more than 10 there too? Or are we just caring about local?
And they all scrunch up for their pictures too, so. They don't follow the rules at all.
Well, I mean, would it be possible to have like a Board of Supervisors Zoom on a particular device that catches all of us that attend?
Yeah, I could work on integrating the basement video system into that.
Okay. What is boardroom security going to be doing? Yeah, you gonna have your face up there and look intimidating if someone starts yelling over the live stream?
Right now, we're just going with the flow where we say. I will tell you that I'm part of the emergency management team, and in order to have 5 laptops, we only have 3 people out at TSI right now. And as long as they have their mute button on the other laptops, it's fine. But if they're all playing at the same time, there's feedback. So
Gets really ugly.
she usually has hers on. The other ones in the room are just listening off of her computer to back it up and see everybody. But the microphone is probably going to be the problem. So, it works great. I mean, if you went and did it from home, I realize that you have to kind of be here to sign things, but it works. It works really good. Well, a lot of times.
If we did do a Zoom meeting for the Board of Supervisors meeting on Tuesday night, who would be the remote participants then? Or what would we accomplish? If you guys are all still going to come here, what would be accomplished by doing it over Zoom?
I would assume we would keep it below 10 by mandating department heads to attend that way. Is that what you envision, Pat?
That's like Mark has to come and has something for you to sign every week.
By appointment only, they come down the stairs during their item and then they leave.
Yeah, that's not that bad an idea, just to have
It's a big courthouse.
have a live
I mean,
stream up in the old boardroom, and when somebody's got to come down, we, announce they're coming down the steps. Maybe do like the WWE's fireworks and stuff. Price is right.
Come on down.
Honestly, I think that's the easiest
Yeah.
solution
There you go.
in the short term, because in a couple weeks, this will all be different.
Right.
So,
But I do like the thing about teams is that everybody should become more aware of what the capability is in doing that sort of thing internally. But that does seem like a pretty easy solution to it.
all right.
Some items I could just send and Pat could pass them around and then scan back to me and keep the original.
Right.
I mean, most of the time they're getting the original anyway. Today's plan sheet was probably unique as far as needing to be here. And then the bid over. Those are really the two presents would be.
And I think it would be fairly simple to meet the standards. I mean, for 10 people, if we were doing something like that, is there something you could do up in the boardroom, Andy, that those people could watch and come down when we need them? Yes.
Stand with security and watch it.
Yeah.
Well, they're 20 seconds behind.
There'll be 10
Well,
people up there pretty soon.
The density of people is higher there than here. I mean, we have 10 or 11 in this gigantic space, and if you have 3 in this little, that's why these numbers are just, well, what's a room? But we'll do our best to make everyone happy. And if a couple people have to wait upstairs, it's not that big of a deal. You'll take the elevator. Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's a hallway that goes all the way around. It's
Cafeteria.
could be in timeout in the cafeteria down here.
That's where I was at the
Tell
beginning.
you, yes,
Well, cafeteria might be easier just because it's a walk right over.
there you go, yeah. But then they have to pass through this room, so they take the elevator behind us and go down the
I
hall.
think that'll be okay, man.
All right, I can tell you, at the state pension board that I chair, we limit it to 10 people. The staff members, if they have something on the agenda, they sit in their office in the other side of the building and call in. And if we need them there, somebody else leaves and they come in. And it's not that hard to limit it to 10 people.
Yeah.
I mean, you could sit here and reinvent the wheel for a couple of weeks, but
Yeah,
Right.
I agree. So assuming Pat's here to work the camera, you have 5 and then have up to 5 in the audience and the rest can be up at the spaced in the Board of Supervisors first floor room or somewhere else you deem
Okay,
easy enough to set up.
I'll work on a solution.
Thank you. Is Joshua happy with that?
I think it satisfies the legal requirements.
Excellent. That's a 100% answer there. 100% rating. Any other thoughts on COVID-19 and our place in this world? All right. Item 10, reports on committee meetings. Anyone?
I have an update on our workforce development region. We did have the Region 8 had voted to combine unanimously. Region 13 had, and Region 12 finally got all of us to attend a meeting via phone. It was a challenge because some of the others only have the rotary phone on the wall. So we were able to get everybody into a Zoom call, and so Region 12 voted to merge with 8 and 13. So we're going to work on a new 2080 agreement for that new region. So it'll be our 5 counties of Region 12. There were 6 counties in Region 8 and 7 counties in Region 13. So it'll be an 18-county region. It will give us enough dollars then to actually hire an admin staff person. We'll determine still yet who's going to be a fiscal advisor, and likely we'll work with the COG, Council of Governments, kind of like Simcoe essentially in Carroll, to be the staff for this new region. They were the staff of their old region. The benefit to having a COG do it is they're used to doing those kind of things, and they're not a provider. Where in our region we had WIT being the fiscal agent, staff, and provider, which is not allowed by law. So we're making things correct here in the future. And that is all I have.
Mr. Radig and I had a policy review committee meeting last week. Well, the minutes aren't ready yet, but they'll be passed out to all of you once they're drafted. Only item was really discussing the administrative leave issue, and I believe we reached consensus and agreement on communication style and its necessity and the process, and we'll clarify the next version of the handbook with something that corresponds to the authority resting with each elected official, along with discussion of different cases that have happened elsewhere and when the line is really crossed and things like that, but consistent with what the most recent action the board took. Anything to add, Radig?
Just the importance of the notification of the HR director on both leave items, I think, is important in the future.
Yep. Appreciate everyone coming together, figuratively and unfortunately literally in that instance. No more than a governor's press conference. Mr. DeWitt, anything?
Yeah, we had a Rolling Hills governance meeting last week that was a touch over 2 hours on the phone. In the state's wisdom, they decided to add 3 voting but non-elected members to each governance board. And so one of the remedies, and we couldn't get anything reversed or stopped, but one of the remedies, and I have an example here from one of the other supervisors from Carroll County, was that in case of a tie vote, a tie vote with, this is where we need to probably look at changing the 2080, and I will bring this forth if it sounds like the thing to do, but revise the 2080 that's currently in existence to, should there be a tie vote, to go back and give the weight of each county 3 votes while maintaining 1 vote for each of the non-elected members. And there was some discussion about maybe making it a vote weighted by population of the county. I did speak up, I thought, and not speaking for the board, but I didn't feel that that was probably the right answer. I'd rather see it amend the 2080 that we have to show that on a tie vote we go to a weighted vote of 3 votes per county and 1 vote for non-elected advocates. I just see this as doing not much more than, obviously the non-elected people have no skin in the game, so to speak, and so I guess I'd like some input on what to put on the agenda. Should we model it after this one?
I think we have to do something.
It shouldn't affect us, not to interrupt, but it shouldn't affect us as much since there's 8 counties in the region. But perhaps the old region that we came from being 3,
It would have been nuts.
3 elected and 3 non-elected, it could have been just chaos, as opposed to voting members spending taxpayer money that have no real say in where the money comes from and that kind of thing. So I think we should at least discuss, maybe I'll get with Mr. Woodman and with this example that I've got in front of me here, and we'll put it on the agenda for next week. But I don't think it's going to take effect until the next fiscal year of July 1st. So the clock is ticking, but we should probably start thinking about it and talking about it. So I'll get with Mr. Woodman and get thoughts and go from there.
Were the governance board members either by majority or unanimous not supportive of that legislative change?
They weren't supportive of it, no. One is an at-large voter, and to be fair, to discuss it, it was for the child advocacy part, but which nobody is fundamentally against. It's just the fact that we're responsible for our vote, and here's 3 voting members on every region now that don't have much of a chance of getting voted off. They're simply appointed, and I don't think, I'm sure there's no conscious effort to eliminate the child advocacy mental health issues or coverage, but I think this needs to be talked about and kind of fixed. And one more thing that the Iowa legislature seems to get their fingers in without at times probably much thinking through or follow through, and cause unintended consequences, if you will. So
Yeah, I remember this topic being discussed in the Supervisors committee at ISAC one year, and there was almost no one in support of it.
no,
I don't know where this pushing came from.
I don't either, because I got with Jacob Bossman down there, and he was completely unaware of it. But by the time anything could be done about it, it was lobbied through, and here we sit. So,
Well, it starts with children's mental health, but what happens if they want to push for more involvement? And it's a can of worms.
So is it 1 or is it 3? It's 3 people, you said, right?
3 per region, yeah. So again, I don't think it would cause us much chaos, but on a smaller region until the state, for lack of a better word, fixes the regions. But yeah, it's three additional voting members per region, which could really cause problems with smaller regions. For example, yeah, we don't need to discuss that, but
This is an amendment to the Iowa code, right? Is that what they did?
as I understand it, yeah.
Okay. I say, Josh, are you still on there? Must not be, but kind of wonder if there's a legal course we could take. Because I know the counties fought forced regionalization on the workforce development side of things and won. And now, of course, we're regionalizing the way we want to, or consolidating the way we want to, but something like this seems like it would be something we could take as a legal action where you're now letting unelected people from not necessarily even in our county make decisions that affect our budget.
So any thoughts on, I mean, I personally kind of like the weighted vote on, in the event of a tie. And not by population, just by, in accordance with a tie vote.
Yeah, I think that's probably what the governance board would want to recommend too, from the sounds of it.
Yeah, because I think even ISAC, like you alluded that ISAC was talking, or it was brought up in an ISAC meeting, and I don't, there was some mention of ISAC wasn't in favor of it on the phone call last week, but it is what it is, and we're stuck with that. So we're going to work our way around it to the best of our ability in this fashion. So I think it's about accountability, and I'm accountable. I don't understand how we can.
How are these members to be appointed and removed and such?
I think they were already appointed for our, at the other meeting, at the last meeting that Mr. Butler and I went to over in Holstein. It was already decided, I think, who was going to be on, with the exception of one. And I don't remember how they were being appointed, and I didn't hear anything about how they could be removed. So.
We do have Joshua back.
I can't remember everything I said, so.
I was asking if there's a legal action we could take against the state for putting the 3 appointees in the mental health region.
Yeah, I can get with Rocky and look at this a little bit. I'm not really familiar with the new legislation or exactly, what the terminology in the statute is as far as how they're picked. It would seem like there should be accountability to the voters at some point if they're making decisions regarding expenditure of funds and that sort of thing. So it's something I can look into, but I'm not sure what the answer is at this point.
I'll get with you later this week, if possible, and we'll probably have to social distance in your office at some point.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Congratulations to those that have been sworn in by virtue of, I don't know, a letter in the mail. Oh, well. Any other reports on committee meetings?
No.
Item 11, any citizen concerns? Anyone on the phone or otherwise? No? Any board concerns, item 12? And I'll see or hear from you guys next week. We're adjourned.